Hello, folks. Welcome to the Voice of Liberty podcast. First off, I want to apologize for not having done an episode in, I believe, 2 days. I'm not 100% sure of how long it's actually been. My power went out, and of course, with my power going out, I lost all ability to be able to produce podcasts. But we're back. And I'm going to take a break from ranting and raving about Trump. I'm going to take a break from ranting and raving about his response to the riots. I'm actually going to take a complete break from the riots and go back to something that kind of has fallen out of the front page of mainstream media, but needs to be talked about. And that's COVID-19. That's the shutdowns. That is the economic impact of them. And that is also the problem that is truly facing America right now, where people can't afford to live. And in this, I'm probably going to have some people also question my libertarian bona fides, and I accept that. Some people during this conversation may also challenge me as to my reaction to COVID-19 and the shutdown, and I also embrace and own that. But this discussion, I feel, is important because it seems that us as libertarians, we occasionally argue reactions to current events and reactions to situations based on us being in our ideal utopia, our ideal libertarian utopia, whatever that may be, whether it's Ancapistan or a LibSoc community or whatever else in between it may be. So let's argue from reality. And let's argue from what we have to fight against, which is the system that is in place. And let's argue from the reality that is there's people that are in need right now. Now, first, just to clear up a couple things, because I know some people watching this are going to want to put out how I reacted to the shutdowns. I know some people are going to want to bring up what I said about shutting down. And I'll admit I didn't argue it in the best of ways. I was reacting to things going on in my own life and with my own employment status, and wasn't really arguing from a logical standpoint. I don't favor government shutdowns. Let's just get this out of the way right now. I will fully admit they are detrimental. And that's a discussion that we have to have. I do favor voluntary shutdowns, localized communities deciding if they need to shut down or not, if they need to lock down a little bit to try and slow the spread of a virus. I support these things. But what I'm going to argue here would be applicable whether we shut down or not, because most people who, other than those that work for small businesses that were shut down or own their own business, most people would have experienced an economic impact of COVID-19 no matter what. They would have experienced a hardship no matter what. And the reason is pretty simple. When COVID-19 came to the United States and it started going crazy and it started getting out of hand, people's faith in going shopping, consumer confidence went down. And naturally, people were afraid to go out. You have this new virus that no one knows much about. Do I want to risk going out and going shopping? Well, as a result of that, businesses would have done what happened anyway. They would have laid people off. They would have told people that they need to go on unemployment. They would have told people that they need to just collect. Some people, in the case of sex workers and many other people that can't collect, would have probably wound up in the same position. So that brings us to this conversation. What does the government need to do? Especially when the government has set us up to fail in this situation from the start. We'll argue it here. We were shut down by the government. Okay? Get it out of the way. Shouldn't have happened. So with that in mind, what does the government owe us? What is the responsibility of the government? And I know a lot of libertarians really don't want to have this conversation because that means the government spending money and the government handing out money. And, well, we don't like that. But there are people currently that, due to COVID-19, are behind on their rent, are behind on their car payments, can't afford to pay their health insurance, can't afford to go to a doctor, can't afford to put food on the table, can't afford basic utilities. And those people, even if we reopen the economy right now, right here, right now, those people are not going to suddenly be okay. Landlords are going to file eviction notices. Utilities are going to get shut off. Cars are going to get repossessed. Oh, reopening the economy is not going to suddenly help these people who have been negatively impacted by this virus. So what do we do? And how do we help them? And what should the government really do? Well, I have to reflect on something that Justin Amash was pushing for, where he was pushing for essentially UBI for a set period of time, where each person who received a part of the initial stimulus, which I'm going to get to in a minute on how ridiculous that was, receives a certain amount of money per month for the length of the impacts of the virus. Now, what would that do? What would that do? So, as people return to work and their income starts coming back, not only do they have their income, they also have this supplemental income coming in. They can get caught up on bills. They can get caught up on these things that they are behind on. That, again, even if there was no shutdown, even if it was just an economic turndown, would have occurred. I think that's something that needs to be remembered in this whole conversation. This was inevitable. This would have happened without a shutdown. So, you put $1,000 a month into a person's bank account. They can then use that $1,000 to start paying off debts incurred during the shutdown. Start paying back your rent. Start paying back your electric, your cable, your cell phone bill, your car payment. Then these people have one less thing to worry about. They can focus on what needs to be focused on, which is getting back to work and doing it in a safe pattern. They can focus on getting back to work and not having to worry that they're going to come home to an eviction notice. Beyond that, state governments need to step in. And again, this is going to get some of my libertarian bona fides questioned, but it's a statement that needs to be made. The state governments need to step in, and they need to freeze evictions. They need to freeze delinquencies on mortgages. They need to freeze repossessions. Because again, we're put in this situation, in real world, we were put in this situation by the government shutdown. But again, I will reiterate, this would have occurred in any case, shutdown or no shutdown. So this is what needs to occur. States need to protect their people. States need to ensure that suddenly the homeless population doesn't spike, or suddenly people can't get to work. Therefore, the jobless claims stay higher or stay the same height they are now, or get even worse. That way, people don't lose power. So that way, people don't have to worry about getting sick due to unsanitary conditions. See, the people right now are at the disadvantage more than anything else. If the state reopens, if your state reopens right now, theoretically, your courts reopen. Theoretically, if you have a landlord who doesn't understand the situation, they're going to file an eviction notice. Your car will get repossessed. So the state really and the government have two jobs that they must accomplish here. The first being they need to freeze these things so they don't occur. And by freezing this, they also freeze the things that landlords theoretically are worried about, their mortgages and things like that. See, once you freeze that straight across the board, you give people a chance to get caught up. You give people a chance to get back on stable feet. You see, I am not afraid to hide this. If the court's open tomorrow, I will be evicted. It's just as fair as it gets. And it's because my roommate's been out of work. And I've been working on reduced pay. Because even those that stayed in work, we went to reduced hours. We went to reduced wages. We lost overtime. So yes, libertarians, we don't want to be handing out money just willy-nilly. We'd like to cut down on spending. We would like to not have the government handing things like this out. But that's in a far out there utopia that we don't live in. That's in a point in time that we are not capable of being at yet. That's a distant thought. The fact of the matter is, we live in reality. And the only handout that the government gave to attempt to solve the financial crisis that was caused or was accelerated by them was a $1,200 handout to people. And this is the real conversation I wanted to get to, which is this. Where we complain that the bailout was so large, $3 billion or $3 trillion. Yeah, I'm losing it. $3 trillion. But we fail to talk about where the problem lies there. Now, I have some libertarian friends who did talk about this problem. I'm going to shout out my friend John, who also mentioned that the pork in this bill was ridiculous, and that if it was going to do anything, it should help the people in the small businesses. Me and him agreed on that from the start. The people got handed crumbs. In theory, we are the ones that supply the government with its money. We are the ones that supply the government with its operating revenue. Yet big business, who are in theory too big to fail, get handed millions. They get handed massive bailouts while they're turning record profits. That makes no sense to me. Hand the companies turning record profits massive handouts, while the people who are literally suffering some of the worst financial hardships since 2008 during the Great Recession, hand them crumbs. Hand them $1,200. Oh yeah, measly peasants who pay taxes and, live under our foot. Here's $1,200. Be happy. While your buddies on Wall Street are getting millions. And while their businesses, again, who are turning record profits, suddenly get even more money thrown in their pockets. While small business owners are struggling to keep themselves afloat, their businesses are dying. And while individuals, the people that this government's supposed to represent, are worrying whether they're going to have a roof over their head when everything actually kicks back on. See, we spent too much time arguing back and forth with each other about the lockdown. What we didn't spend enough time talking about is the fact that no matter how much we argue back and forth with each other, the lockdown was inevitable. The government was going to do it. They weren't going to go, oh, hey, look, those people in Pennsylvania didn't want it. Those people in Michigan didn't want it. They were going to do it anyway. We spent too much time arguing back and forth with each other about that instead of discussing how we put pressure on our elected officials to make sure that they took care of us, to make sure that they made right what they made wrong. We spent way too much time doing that. From March, the government should have been handing, and this could have been done with that bill, the CARES Act that passed, by the way. If you hadn't have handed the pork out, we could have had all of this done with far less than what the CARES Act cost. I just want to get that out of the way quick. The government could have been handing out $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month to all the people that got a $1,200 check from the CARES Act. Those people would have been small business owners. Those people would have been individuals like myself who work a 9-to-5 job, who rely on overtime to barely make ends meet. Then those people could have used that $2,000, that $1,000 or $2,000 to pay their rent, to pay their cable, to pay their electric, to pay for their car, so that the money they were taking in either through unemployment or through working their limited hours at their job, that could have been focused on ensuring they were healthy and ready to fight the virus if they got it. So what do we have to do moving forward? Now that's the question. What do we have to talk about moving forward from this? Because if anybody thinks this is the end of COVID, or that this is the end of pandemics, they've never studied history, and they don't know a thing about epidemiology. So what do we have to do moving forward, and what do we have to prepare for? Well, in my mind, it's pretty simple. Keeping in mind that COVID-19 will probably come back, and it will probably come back with a vengeance. We, the people, need to remind our representatives who they work for. We need to remind them that if another economic turndown occurs due to COVID-19, that we, the people, not big businesses, are the ones who need help. We need to remind them that small businesses, not big business, are the ones who need help. Beyond that, we, the people, need to put the government in a situation where they don't have to lock us down. We need to immediately, whether it's COVID-19 or the next pandemic, we need to take precautions out the gate. We need to practice physical distancing. I committed this cardinal sin, in my opinion, just earlier in this podcast. I try not to say social distancing. We need to practice physical distancing right out the gate. Start wearing masks, washing hands, cleaning surfaces. We need to start taking the precautions right out the gate. If there's a giant outbreak in our community, we need to begin fighting that outbreak. Deciding whether we voluntarily shut down for a week or two, kind of kick all the normal social activities to the side and let this thing just kind of not take root in our community. We need to do that. That way, the government is never in a situation where it has the power, where it has the opportunity to shut us down. We need to spend less time fighting with each other along political grounds. Republicans versus Democrats, Libertarians versus Greens, Constitutionalists versus whatever, capitalists versus socialists. We need to stop fighting with each other along these grounds and recognize one thing. We're all Americans. We all live in this fucked up country together, and we all have to somehow make it through this together. So, the next pandemic. Do we want a repeat of this? Do we want to be right back here? Do we want to be right back where on the outset of this, there's going to be a massive amount of evictions. There's going to be a ton of repossessions. People's credit scores are going to tank. Do we want to repeat this? Or do we want to be more prepared to fight it? Do we want to be more prepared to take action ourselves? Voluntary action. Do we want to be more prepared to, as communities, support each other and stop the spread of virus in our communities? And if, during the next pandemic, the government does put its boot on our throats, then we need to also be prepared to tell them no bailouts for big business. Bailouts for small businesses are okay. Bailouts for the people who you're inconveniencing, they're okay. See, that's where we could really succeed. That's where we could really gain traction. And that's where we could make unbelievable things happen. I have to think about these types of things, kind of reflecting on the Libertarian Party, where we seek to be and where we as libertarians seek to go. We want to be elected to office. We want to enact change. We want to help solve the system we live under. But if we continue to act as though a libertarian gets elected as state senate, House of Representatives, the governor, city council, president, whatever, if we continue to act as if they're going to get elected into that position, suddenly the system is just going to bow down to their needs and bow down to them and say, oh man, we've been doing it wrong, the libertarians here to fix it. Take a look at Justin Amash. It's not doing that for him. We need to be prepared as libertarians, as a party, to argue and to work kind of within the system we're in. Figure out ways to progress towards liberty and freedom. Figure out ways to progress towards limited government within the system we're in. Because eventually what's going to happen is we will start to turn people. We will start to make inroads. People will no longer look at the Libertarian Party and go, wow, they're a bunch of fools who have no idea what they're doing. They'll look at us and say, wow, they have a plan. And not only do they have a plan, but that plan has worked. And then what happens? We grow. People seek more liberty and they seek more freedom. They seek a reduction in government size and therefore a reduction in tyranny. And suddenly we're no longer a joke. How we approach things is how the people will reflect on us. How we discuss handling pandemics has an impact on how the public looks at us. It's just something to keep in mind there for the Libertarian Party. But beyond that, I have no problem admitting I'm a libsoc. I'm a left lib. Compassion towards humanity is a part of that whole entire left libertarian ideology. So, of course, if I'm going to have to work within this government system, I want that government system to be compassionate towards humanity. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to COVID-19, the people matter more than anything else. If they have the means to sustain themselves and to live, if they have the means to be good or be able to be secure, that was a better way to say it, then that's just one less burden that they have, one less little bit of stress that they have. That's who the government should have been helping. I know it's not libertarian to say that, and I know I'll get shit for it. I really don't care. Because watching friends suffer and watching friends receive eviction notices, that hurts me. Because if I wasn't in a similar situation, I'd be trying to help them as best I could. It hurts to watch your friends go through this. And I almost feel like A lot of the people who want immediate reopening forget the human impact and the human aspect of this entire pandemic. Yes, it hurt businesses. Yes, it's hurt the economy. But it's hurt the people even more. People who had savings, it's gone. People who had their car paid off or paid up to date, it's now behind. People who are that close to having their rent caught up because they struggle to keep up with skyrocketing rent costs, they now have a massive bill. And if you reopen it right now, fully, without helping the people, suddenly their lives mean nothing. Suddenly, their liberty and their freedom means absolutely nothing. That's where we really need to be focusing. So, join me back tomorrow night, probably about 9 o'clock. Tonight was a late night. I had a late meeting. Join me tomorrow, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. I'll have some other random thing to talk about. Maybe it'll do with COVID-19. Maybe it'll do with President Trump. God knows what I'm going to fucking encounter tomorrow. And to everybody, have a good night. Thank you for watching Voice of Liberty. My name is Henry Conley. And as always, awaken the voice of liberty.